So we have three major steps in a water accounting. So we have data collection and also identification of possible gaps in our data, analysis of the data, what we do, which type of information we can extract from the data, and then the communication aspect. So we want a stakeholder to actually benefit from the data. And then I have added a few definitions, which you might have seen before. We want to, so the main objective of water accounting is trying to make sense of how much water is available and how much has been already used. So who's using how much? That's often an important question. And they also define it as a systematic quantitative assessment of status and trends in water supply, demand, distribution, and accessibility. We have usually the issue where demand and supply are not necessarily in balance. So your demand is when the system is not in balance, your demand is higher than your supply. So you have to find a way to balance this and decide on which sector will take how much water. How much water is used by fishery, by rain-fed agriculture, irrigated agriculture, and so forth. So we try to express this information in terms of maps as a spatial distribution, but also in terms of accounting sheets. We have, in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sheets. Yes. So they actually belong to 6 sheets. So the ones you see here, so this the overview, then the ET. Agriculture is split in 2 parts. Normally you have a part on consumption in agriculture and a part on productivity and water productivity. Utilized flows, now we focus very much on the man-made utilization of blue water, but there was also a sheet about the natural withdrawals. And then we have surface water is one sheet and groundwater is the next sheet. We are still, there was one sheet about ecosystem services, but we are revising this at the moment. So it's not yet available, but the idea is to have also to find a way to report on ecosystem services, and then also to have a way to represent trends and sustainability in the trends. Some of you are actually working with both water productivity and water accounting, and you would like to know whether water accounting is complementing water productivity or vice versa. So I think they have a similar type of purpose, but then they are implemented in different ways and they are used for different applications. In a way, if you want, to me, again, I'm maybe not an expert in water productivity, but water productivity is water accounting of an irrigation scheme. There is, of course, a lot more in there, and the way you do is slightly different. So, in my opinion, when you look at the scales are different. So in water accounting, you have more of a general overview, more of a first assessment, water resources conditions at the river basin scale. And when agriculture or your particular interest is in a command area or particular crops, then you want to zoom in into the analysis, and then you work on a water productivity assessment. They have a lot of similarity. So they both water accounting and water productivity, they are based, for example, on remote sensing, the type of work we are doing now with you and at IHE. And we also have a component of water productivity in the agricultural sheet. So there we also look at crop yield or biomass productivity and water productivity, but scales are very different, and also the process, the way things are calculated. So have you seen probably in water productivity, you also have strong component on the field work and field assessment. and detailed crop mapping, which is something we don't necessarily do for water accounting. We start with data collection, and with data we mean mostly remote sensing. We looked at how to download remote sensing data mostly. So we did that, and for the report, what you find in the document is a list of all these data sets that can be downloaded or partly calculated with some of the tools. I hope this is more or less clear. Of course, the Python scripts are meant to help you to do it in a more automated way, but there are also manual way to download the data if necessary, or things can be adjusted. Now, I just repeated the links here to the software. So all the codes on water accounting we develop, you can find on GitHub, under GitHub water accounting. We have used during the last session what is called WATools. We have made some adjustments to the tool and now works with Python 3. And you can download it at this link. And normally we mainly use it for the collect package that allowed us to collect data. Now soon this package is called WATools will be replaced by what we call IHE collect. And this will be more of a, it's more standardized, it's more stable, but it's a little bit less easy to use if you don't have a lot of experience with Python. If you want, you can already experiment with it and you can start installing if you like. I had some issues. That's why I decided not to use it for the moment. So we are still using this WATools. So for the moment, both work. Can be that this IHE collect has some upgrades or some corrections. For example, when the data provider changes, I don't know, file name or folder structure, I think this is more up to date. So this is, let's say, one first step is downloading data. And then the other step is to look at the land use map. We discussed about how to make a land use map for water accounting. Now, I understand the challenge. There is nothing which is completely standardized. So, for example, that's also the challenge, this big list of data sets. For every study, one might decide to use one data set or another because of, I don't know, one product is performing better in this particular situation, or constraints because you need to do a study in the past and certain data sets only start in 2014, for example, or you want more recent assessment and then certain data sets have stopped in the meantime. So this makes it challenging. And the same for the land use. It depends a lot which type of initial data set you have. We have used now the NRSC data, yearly maps, which is great in combination with the command areas and the protected areas. And we've made a little code to create the maps. And then the other thing you want to do after you collect the data is to start doing some analysis. What do you want to see? Which type of application are you looking for? We discussed, for example, seasonality or interannual variability. Maybe you want to see from year to year what are the changes and what is happening. For example, here some comparison between different data sets. So it's a lot of data, and that's why I always recommended you to maybe invest some time in also learning a bit more in-depth programming, because that can help you in visualizing the data, which is not just through kind of a JS interface. So you can do some sort of statistics per different areas. So you could think of, for example, downloading data for the entire Karnataka or for the entire India, and then use particular shapes, different basins to calculate the totals or the averages and so on. You can also look at spatial variability, like we discussed. Also, some people were saying, okay, maps are quite informative more than the number itself. Also, to understand that majority of the rainfall is falling in these zones, or that, for example, it's really striking this, I think this is Tungabhadra, right? Scheme. on this side. It's extremely high evapotranspiration. Okay, so spatial variability, it's also something that I think decision makers can understand well. I think maps are very powerful. When you see different zones or you zoom in and you understand what's going on in different, so showing management indicators in a spatially distributed manner, it's quite useful instead of having just one value per subbasin. And then you can have tables where you, for example, here you have different land use types, and then you have precipitation, ET, and P minus ET. The next figure is the same, I just colored it a bit. So in the case of double crops and triple crops, you see that the water yield is very negative or highly negative. It's almost minus 1,000 million cubic meter per year. While in fallow land, as we expect, is actually positive. So these zones are actually generating runoff. This is also something that you do not necessarily immediately see from a map or from a long list of data. Okay, and then similarly, so when you start comparing land use with all these different remote sensing data sets, you can also, I think the way you visualize the data helps you understanding what is happening. So that's why it's important, this communication tool. So water accounting is not just the accounting sheets. I think they are nice. I think they can be improved, but it's also the way you present the data in tables or pie charts, for example. So if you look here, it's a bit similar. So it's a bit the same idea where you look at the precipitation as a volume. So you have the total in the basin, and here you have the ET. So you see that the ET in the basin is higher than the precipitation. And then you look at the different crops. So for example, 48% of the rainfall is happening over irrigated cropland. And 53% of the consumption is happening in irrigated croplands. So this also gives you an idea of the sectors and how they, which share of the water resources they have and how much they consume. And this can also help you, specifically, in my opinion, the percentages makes it easy to compare with different, for example, basins. Because if you look at the absolute values, the volumes, they are very important, but they also depend on the scale or how big is the river basin. While those type of percentages are kind of easy to compare and helps you understanding how the basin looks like and how it works. So this is my way to tell you that water accounting is more and is not a fixed type of. I think you want to make your own reporting, and you want to explore the data, and then try to understand what you can see from it. Because certain indicators are very useful for one particular case study, but might not be extremely relevant in another case. So that's my message there. And then the other thing was the validation. So this is for precipitation, because usually for precipitation you have a lot of in situ data. For ET, we don't often have. So what we do is maybe a yearly water balance. So you accumulate P and ET on a yearly scale for the basin, and then you make the difference. And if you have some knowledge of inflows and outflows or storage change, you can use that to correct. And this might help you to select a particular data set. So you can say, okay, my combination, my green graph here, the bars, it's calculated using GPM data and SEBOP, and has a worse agreement to the measurements than using combining CHIRPS and SEBOP, for example. It's a first rough assessment. If needed, you can deepen the analysis and try to understand why. And then the last thing you can also do is, for example, look at water levels or include storage change from satellite.